Welcome to the workshop. We've got our consultant, SRF. Stephanie is here this evening to walk you through kind of this steering committee kickoff. So we did provide more of a detailed agenda in your packet. Hopefully you had time to look at that. I think there'll be a few exercises that we're going to be working on. So have your thinking caps on, and I'll turn it over to Stephanie and she can jump in.
Perfect. Thanks, Amy. Yes, we have our agenda that was in your packet. We do have copies in front of you as well, but we'll start with some introductions. You all know each other, but it's my and Sam's opportunity to get to know all of you quick. We'll go through an introduction to the planning process. Some of you, I think, have probably seen this presentation before, so I apologize for hearing it again, but maybe it'll just be a little bit repetitive. That's our way to keep up our memory, right? We'll get into a little bit of who's involved in the planning process and talk about public engagement and how we're going to involve the public in this process as well. So that'll be kind of just our quick intro. And from that standpoint, I am all about interrupting me and having a discussion. It's also a good opportunity for me to take a drink of water. So feel free to ask questions, take a break throughout, let me know, raise a hand, shout things out, things like that. But then, yeah, our fourth item in the agenda will be kind of rolling up our sleeves and talking about things a little bit here in terms of a plan element analysis. So there are some, we'll get into this detail, but 9 required plan elements that we have to talk about in the comprehensive plan for state statutes. And so we want to talk a little bit about what those plan elements mean, and I want your guys' help understanding what maybe some of our strengths, weaknesses, or opportunities are related to those different plan elements, just with your understanding of your time on the Plan Commission. What are some of the things that you've seen come forward, or discussions you've had with neighbors, or your own experiences, some of those things. There is no right or wrong answer in this process either, so no question is a dumb question. Let's throw it out all on the table, be collaborative, have a good discussion, and then we'll chat about our next steps as well. I do want to have a conversation about future meetings with you all as well, and getting some stuff in our calendar so that we can kind of be on the same page moving forward as well, but we'll wrap that into our next steps. So we'll first start with introductions. Just your name, how long you've been on the Plan Commission, and maybe what some of your other roles in the community are as well. And then what is one word that you would use to describe River Falls? So I will start. Again, my name is Stephanie Folkers, a planner with SRF Consulting Group. Really excited to work here with all of you in River Falls on this big planning process with the comprehensive plan and 2 companion plans. One word to describe River Falls. I didn't even think about this. I could use, there was a word that came up in our staff kickoff called somebody brought up bucolic, which has been kind of a fun thing for us to play with from that standpoint. But I would say energy. I think from my perspective, I was really pleasantly surprised, like our first coming in for the interview, and we came for lunch afterwards. There's some good energy that we've felt throughout the community, so I'll use that word. Let's turn over Sam.
And I'm Sam Matu, also with SR Consulting, planner assisting on the comprehensive plan. I think similar to energy, I'd say very passionate as how I would describe River Falls. All the meetings we've had so far, people are 3 steps ahead of us, ready to just dive into this, so it's really great and exciting to see.
I'm Patricia LaRue. I've been on the Plan Commission for about a year now. And describing River Falls, I would say home.
So I'm Chris Holtkamp. I've also been on Plan Commission for almost a year. I think I'm trying to remember when I started. And I guess one word I'd use is probably the word my daughter used when she came to visit and we were driving down Main Street. She said, cute. Lights and snow, and coming from Texas, she was very excited about the snow and the lights.
Excellent.
I'm Lisa Moody, and I've been on the Plan Commission for a couple of terms, and lifelong resident of River Falls. Patricia kind of took my word.
I know. I
So-
thought you've been here longer than me.
So I would say River Falls, life.
Okay.
I'm Mike Woolsey, and I'm returning to the Planning Commission. I was on for one term a couple of years ago, and this is my second meeting back, and I would say stability.
Okay.
See, Dan Tolman, I've been on the planning commission for 10 years now. I would say the word would be dynamic, constantly changing and
Got oxymoronic views of the city over on that side of the table.
Could be.
yeah.
I'm Rebecca Prendergast. I've been on the commission about a year and a half, and I think the word I would describe River Falls is opportunity. There's just opportunity everywhere we turn. There's opportunities for growth, for development, for change, for stability, for dynamic opportunities, things like that.
I'm Emily Shively, I'm the city planner, and my word is beautiful. Really beautiful.
Amy Peterson, Community Development Director, and my word is vibrant.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for choosing words that are also easy to spell. Eclectic was another word I had trouble spelling this time. So, what is the process that we are starting? What are we embarking on? What did we get ourselves into here through this process? So, not only are we going to update the city's comprehensive plan, but we're also going to tackle the bike and ped plan and the outdoor recreation plan through this process. So, no small task, but a really exciting process in whole. And I'll get into the details a little bit of each of these at a high level. But of course, this group is really tasked on focusing on that comprehensive plan. But there's a lot of efficiencies for us in doing these three plans at one time because we're able to engage the public on three broad topics, be efficient in how we're working together from that standpoint. But we were just talking with staff over dinner. There's also a lot of benefits in working in these two system-based plans while we're working on this policy range document, because it provides an opportunity for us to work with the public. It's hard for, hey, members of the public, come join me and let's talk about your 20-year vision for your community. Who knows where any of us are going to be in 20 years? That's a really hard thing for the public to grasp of the concept of what this comprehensive plan is. So it's a really great opportunity that we're using these other two plans or updating these at the same time, because it's something a little bit more tangible. Everybody knows what a bike is. They can kind of understand what the bike and ped plan is. Comprehensive plan, whew, that's a lot to be thinking about. So first, to start out with our comprehensive plan, you, out of all of the groups that we've given presentations to thus far, are probably most familiar with what a comprehensive plan is. It is your guiding document as you are making recommendations as the Plan Commission. So a lot of this is hopefully old news to you, but there are state statutes in place that dictate what we have to do or the process that the city has to go through related to the comprehensive plan. So state statute says that we need to update this plan every 10 years and that it needs to have a 20-year plan horizon. So we're thinking about 2042, I guess, because we're about to head into 2022. But that we're updating it every 10 years. Now, they don't say what level of update that needs to be. It just needs to have some content in there. But it's our opportunity. It's a great thing to update it every 10 years because our demographics are changing. The conditions of our community are changing. So it's just good practice that we're required to do it anyway. But in state statutes, there are 9 required plan elements that we need to talk about. And the important piece here, and I think you all probably have a good understanding of this, is that official mapping, subdivision, and zoning actions must be consistent with a comprehensive plan. That's the base reason why state statute has this requirement, is because if you're gonna make a zoning decision, changing in your regulations, it should be consistent with the overall vision dictated within your comprehensive plan. But a comprehensive plan can be and should be so much more than just that land use planning component. So that was kind of a dry slide. That's really what's required in state statutes. But beyond that, there are a lot of other things that we want to make sure that this comprehensive plan does. We want to make sure that it encourages smart growth patterns that support community need and the provision of efficient infrastructure and local economic development. So again, yes, this plan needs to have a future land use plan to say where we're going to put growth, but we also need to be thinking about efficiency and where we're making sure that we can provide infrastructure, that we're promoting economic development, that we're setting up our transportation system to be efficient. That it should define implementation actions that will help the city achieve its vision for the next 10 to 20 years. So it's a lot of work to put this plan together. But if we put something together that isn't usable or doesn't provide direction for us, then it's a wasted effort, because really the work happens once we're done with this planning process and you're tasked with implementing it. It needs to identify achievable plan vision, goals, and policies. Again, that core root of what a comprehensive plan is. This is our policy document used to make decisions. That it complements and supports other city plans and efforts. Another great reason to be doing those other two plans in tandem with this, because we can make sure that the vision that we're setting is implemented into those two other plans, and that we're also bringing the implementation actions that are defined within those two plans back into our planning process. But we can also build off of recent planning efforts like the Keating Corridor Plan. A lot of great work done there. We don't need to repeat that, we can build from it. So that's our opportunity here as well. It should provide a holistic review of the city system. The word comprehensive plan is an intentional word because it's meant to be comprehensive. This is not just Amy and Emily's plan. This is the entire city's plan. And help to preserve access to a high quality of life for River Falls residents. This is key. And we're very intentional about access to a high quality of life, because high quality of life is different to each of us. For me, it may mean that my kids can walk to school safely in a lighted neighborhood. For Sam, it might be that she's got restaurants that she can walk to and spend time with friends in the evening or something like that. So what those different options are for different community members. And very importantly, it's built from community input. This is really key. We could sit in this room together tonight and write the comprehensive plan. There's no doubt about that. We could come up with a vision, but is that going to be supported by the public? Or is the public going to support future tax increases or spending of different money based on things that we said we need to do? No, it's things that we need to hear from the public to help us drive that direction we want to be headed for the next 10 to 20 years. So what are those 9 required plan elements? So again, these are the terms as defined within state statute. So we'll dive into these a little deeper in the 4th section of our agenda as well. But we've got issues and opportunities. So this is our high level. What's going on right now? What issues do we have as a community? What are our opportunities to build from? So it's kind of a fact-finding mission in some ways. And then implementation is the other bookend of the required plan elements. That is the actions. What are we going to take action on to achieve our vision? Do we need to update a regulation? Do we need to pursue a new facility or something like that? And in between that are then our kind of our systems or different plan element areas. So we have housing, pretty self-explanatory, transportation facilities, community facilities and utilities, land use, agricultural, natural, and cultural resources, economic development, and intergovernmental cooperation. So those are the 7 items that we have to reference in this plan to respond to state statutes. State statutes say that we need to develop goals and implementation actions for each of those 7 plan elements. So really we take those 2 bookends and make sure that we've identified everything within each of these plan elements. But what we do beyond that is up to us as a community. Even where some things fall in some of these topics can kind of mold to what makes sense for River Falls. I'll use outdoor recreation as an example. Through this process, we're going to create a whole plan specific to outdoor recreation, but you don't see parks or recreation showing up in one of these titles specifically. So they might fall into some different areas, but also, and that's a good thing if they're also cross-referencing each other as well. I think, again, not to totally repeat myself, but again, that land use is that big, important piece from the decisions that your body makes when you're looking at a zone change, updating your subdivision regulations. There's a core that chapter is going to be the one that you reference very frequently. but we haven't done our job properly if we don't think about how all of these other elements factor into our development decisions. So that is why we're gonna look at everything altogether. We need to make sure that we've got enough housing allotted in that future land use plan that responds to the needs of our community. So it would be one thing for us to go in and say, we need 600 acres of low-density residential development because we're gonna have that much growth in our community, right? But if that's not what we need high-density development or things like that. That's where we're gonna factor in those considerations from different plan elements. So maybe I'll pause there. Any questions about the comprehensive plan, the plan elements, things like that? Opportunity to give myself a drink of water.
I think you hit the nail on the head with the statement that, you know, the hard work begins when the plan's adopted. That's what I always tell communities I'm doing this work in. So I heard myself speaking, it was kind of fun listening to you, so I'm like, okay, good, I'm on the right track when I say these things, because someone else is saying them too. But that really is true, and I think that's important to really emphasize, like, writing the plan, too many communities like pat themselves on the back, oh, we did it, we're done, yay, and they put it on a shelf and it gathers dust and nobody does anything with it. So really focusing on that idea of implementation, I think is super important.
For sure. And I think that's the one, we'll get into these other plans here, but the bike ped plan, these other system plans, your implementation is easier also to see, because we're going to build a new trail here, or we're gonna develop this park, or we're gonna, you know, put in a basketball court here. Those are really easy, tangible, easy things to understand. There's lots that goes into the actual execution of that. When it comes to this policy level document, the implementation actions are even to some extent higher. We're going to do a future study on something else, but that is really important for us to set that guidance moving forward so you have something to work off. And the intent is to make your job easier. If somebody comes up with a crazy idea that, whoa, what does this even mean? Hopefully there's direction within the comprehensive plan where you can go and say, well, maybe you can't go this way, but could you consider this? Or it's an opportunity to, make it easy to deny someone because it doesn't align with directive of the comprehensive plan. So quickly about the other plans as well. So we've got the bike and pedestrian plan. We do have Alta Planning and Design on our team as well that will be leading the charge for the bike and pedestrian plan. They are national experts in bike and pedestrian planning, so we're really excited to have them on the team as well. But obviously, pretty self-explanatory when we think about the title. Obviously, our bicycle and pedestrian facilities, making sure that that transportation network functions for both a recreational standpoint, but then also from transportation, from whether people are walking or biking as a form of commuting. But it's our opportunity to update that 1995 existing document that's in place today, but provide an action-focused approach to create more bicycle and pedestrian-friendly community with specific recommendations. Again, through this process, we'll be setting goals for what we want to be thinking about our bike and pedestrian system, but working through the process to really tackle down and identify specific actions that we can be taking to promote and increase availability of bike and ped facilities. And then our outdoor recreation plan is our guide for the acquisition and development of public outdoor parks and recreation facilities. So this plan is done in concert with some requirements from the DNR. So the one thing about the bike and ped plan is nobody's telling us what we have to have in that one. That one can be whatever. There's no requirements that we have to meet from that point necessarily, other than there's some funding from WSDOT associated with that. But the outdoor recreation plan, we'll be following the guidance of the DNR for the completion of this plan. And that makes the city ready for some grant funding. So that's the great part about that. I don't remember if I had another slide. Nope. So the one piece with the outdoor recreation plan is that we will look at be completing a needs assessment, but the DNR requires that it's more of a 5-year plan from that standpoint. So looking at our population growth projections, looking at our existing recreation facilities, what are we deficient in today? What should we be looking at for improvements? But beyond just the standard DNR requirements, we want to look beyond that 5-year cycle as well with this plan and be thinking about some longer term needs and implementation actions, thinking about maintenance needs and some of those things that we know are an active conversation for decision makers here. So we will be looking to meet the base requirements with the outdoor recreation plan, but then also going beyond that as well. And I won't dive deep into our timeline here, but the intent is really that these 3 plans are going to be developed in generally the same time frame. What that allows us to do is using our engagement activities to hit all 3 plans. So being efficient, getting everybody together at once, and connecting from there. And then that engagement will happen throughout the planning process. But really the intent is that we're looking to wrap up the bike and ped plan and the outdoor recreation plan within about a year. That we'll be completing those plans. What our process will do is we'll be setting our goals and our vision for the community early on for the comprehensive plan, allowing the goals for the 2 system plans to align with that overall vision. And then because those 2 plans will be done first, we'll have our implementation actions already outlined to make sure that those implementation actions funnel back up into the comprehensive plan, which will be completed and go through the adoption process after those other 2 plans are completed. So who is involved in this planning process? This is probably no surprise. Obviously our residents and stakeholders. Again, the comprehensive plan particularly is intended to be the residents' plan. We want to make sure through this planning process that they have opportunities to provide their input, that they can feel connected with some of the themes and goals that we're identifying, in the hopes that when we get to that really hard stage of implementation, that we have support behind us, that there's different community groups that are helping, ready to help volunteer to execute things, or just kind of there for support. And then we have our 3 committees that will be part of this. Again, you as our comprehensive plan steering committee are really going to be leading the charge from the comprehensive plan perspective, but then we have a volunteer bike and ped committee, which will be meeting here at the beginning of January, and will be really serving this same role for the bike and ped plan. And then we have the Park and Recreation Advisory Committee that will be functioning in the same way for the outdoor recreation plan. And then of course we have commissions and councils and city departments, which are critical to our planning process because they're also the direct implementers of this plan and our knowledge base for a lot of what's going on. And then of course the consultant team. So what are the engagement opportunities? And I'll go through this relatively quickly, but we do have some specific points in the planning process where we're looking to go out to the public to get input through different phases of our process. So of course we're going to have some ongoing activities from our Bang the Table or our online engagement platform, which will be a consistent online resource for people to find out information about the planning process, to respond and provide input on different things throughout. We'll be using social media and different promotional activities to keep this planning process in the forefront of people's brains, keep them engaged as we're going through things. This steering committee, we've identified 7 meetings that we'll have, and we'll talk about that in a little bit about when we want to have those things, but this is the one meeting where I will be doing a lot of the talking. The future meetings will be opportunities, you'll get things to review ahead of time, and it'll be more of a discussion, us working through things, making sure we're headed in the right direction. So this is the one easy meeting, I will give you that from that standpoint. But then the next 3 items on here are really our targeted community engagement opportunities. So first we will start with our issues and opportunities. So this is our kickoff with the public. What in the heck are we doing? Why should you be involved in this process? But it's our opportunity to learn about issues and opportunities that people are facing as River Falls residents. So we'll be looking to hold events and have some virtual opportunities, so both in person and online, to get that feedback. Then midway through the planning process, So now we've developed our goals, we kind of understand where we're going, we're starting to do analysis. We want to come back out to the public and say, did we hear you right? Are we headed in the right direction? Should we in fact be looking at ways to increase access to affordable housing, or are we headed in the wrong direction? So that'll be our opportunity there through focus groups and an online engagement opportunity. And then the last big concrete piece is draft plan engagement event. So as we're finalizing the plan, we have our recommendations, we have our implementation plan laid out. Is this truly, we're finalizing the plan, this is our direction. Did we hear you right? Did we miss anything? Before it goes through the formal adoption process, which of course is through public hearing, which is technically another public engagement opportunity. And then the bike and ped plan and park and recreation plan each have their own engagement as well, which will have some opportunity to get out into the community and engage with the public as well. And of course, I think this is pretty self-explanatory, but the input that we receive directly will go into the results that we see. So this first engagement opportunity that we'll talk about with issues and opportunities, that's going to tell us where do we want to be focusing. Again, from a transportation standpoint, is it that nobody wants to use their car anymore, and we want to be thinking about flying vehicles and electric vehicles, or whatever it is that we hear. Obviously there's some truthing that will have to happen in that, but we will be going through a process with you of this is what we heard, these are the topics that got brought up. What does that mean? Is this a new goal for us? Should it shift a direction that we've been heading? So that's kind of just essentially what's up here. Before I go into this next piece, I didn't have a slide, but really about what your role and what your what our hope is for how we can be working together. I apologize, I need to turn my phone off, I guess. Really, again, we hope to use you as our sounding board through this process. And again, really looking forward to the opportunity to roll up our sleeves, work together, and have a good discussion on laying out this plan for the future of River Falls. So from what you can expect from us from that standpoint will be materials sent to you for review as you get a packet normally at least a week ahead of the meeting. And we do that in hopes that even if it's just opening up the files and taking a quick skim, I understand everybody has a lot going on in their lives, but hopefully getting an opportunity to come and be ready to engage in this process, because we'll be working with staff on a lot of things, but we need your views and opinions as we move forward. You're going to be reviewing a lot of things before they go out to the general public and things like that. We also hope that you will help us promote this planning process. It's going to be especially critical in these initial stages when we're trying to get people involved in this crazy long-range planning process. Using your connections to help get people educated about what a comprehensive plan is, get them signed up for our online engagement platform and some of those things. And we hope that you'll attend public engagement events and things like that with us. So, did I miss anything on process or anything like that? Okay. Any questions?
Any questions?
Sure.
So I was wondering, have you ever been in a situation where staff and commissioners and council are going one way, and then the public starts saying something else, and you totally have to change your direction? Or do you say, actually, we kind of know what we're doing here, follow us? Or do you just say, well, if that's what you want?
I'm gonna say no to the last piece in that's what you want, because the one thing is the public can sometimes have rose-colored glasses and not understand the full picture of what it takes to execute something. It would be great for us to hear that we want, to bring in some big shopping center or something like that. That isn't some idea that's way out there that would take a lot of infrastructure to execute. The funding would be. We need to understand that not everything can be achieved. So part of that is understanding in that conversation, okay, we hear you. This is what some of the trade-offs are to have those things. And then it's navigating that process of those trade-offs between the public and between staff. Because there are gonna be times that we're gonna challenge staff. Because I'm sure I sat on their side of the table many moons ago, in a different community. And it's really nice for me to be able to only have to check off 4 boxes when I'm reviewing a site plan. But there might be a new requirement that we wanna add in that would really benefit the community in X, Y, and Z. So we need to kind of navigate those trade-offs so that is a discussion that'll have to happen between what the public's desires are, what we're hearing from staff, and even maybe some of the things that we hear from you. So our job is to facilitate that process of bringing all of those ideas to the table and having that discussion of trade-offs.
Because I've read through our 2005 plan, and high level of people were committed to a small town. And I don't think people understand, if you're gonna be a small town, that means you're gonna have to, if you're not gonna have the industrial parks or the business parks, and you're not gonna have these other things, and you wanna stay small, you're gonna have to pay for the high education you want. You're gonna have to pay for the safety you want.
Yes.
And so I'm kind of like, when you put things out there, and I mentioned this at the park board.
Yeah.
The other thing I'm concerned of, when you do things on the internet, you're gonna get people from Colorado and telling us, I can appreciate that people might have their input. Oh, I lived in River Falls 20 years ago, and I think, okay, fine,
Yeah.
but you're not paying for it, so I don't know how you keep those people, get their ideas, but keep them from being a decision maker.
Right. And there are some things that we're able to do online with the online engagement platform. It is something that you'll sign up to do, so it'll give us some information about who is providing what comments and things like that. But we also will be able to truth, some of that. It becomes pretty evident when certain themes come out that, this idea is off base, or this doesn't really align with what we've been hearing. I think the other piece with the small town component is, I think the definition of small town, and that becomes a hard piece in this exercise particularly, when you think about like the word cute. I'll use cute as the example. That means a lot of different things. That word can mean different things. And so we want to be mindful of kind of that context of things too, because small town may not be that we want to be Luck, Wisconsin. That's just where my family grew up, in Polk County, so I'll use that as my example. That's definitely a small town, but that maybe isn't what people are meaning when they say River Falls is a small town. So understanding some context with some of those things as well will have to be, it's a hard thing for us to navigate, but.
Well, and oftentimes too, the challenge is getting public engagement, not having too much of it. So getting enough people to participate so you feel like you do have that meaningful response rate, if you will.
Exactly.
Can also be a challenge, more so than like random people from wherever chiming in too.
Yeah.
I think I look at this as a document, it's the guiding document, it comes from staff when it needs to be cited when we're moving ahead on projects. And I feel in institutions like even the university that I work at, we set up plans and then we kind of put them on the shelf, we don't cite them. And I looked at this last approval that we did this evening, and I liked that the language in it is consistent with a comprehensive plan, it's consistent with a preliminary plat. And this is the document that when we do a project, I'm hoping that it gets cited publicly, that this is the case. We had some issues with some folks who didn't like the development along the river, and that was months after we approved the Kinney Corridor Plan, and it said that development was gonna be right there.
Yeah.
And we can go back and say, the community, even though some community members don't agree, but as a community, we agreed that is acceptable, and we have a plan to point to, and that's why I like this.
Yeah.
I don't know if that 2005 document, where that ended up as far as, in my last time I was on the commission, I don't recall having it referenced as often.
Sure.
and it's dated now,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so it's, you know, that's why I think this is an important project, and as something to cite whenever we move forward
Mhm.
with a plan,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
to the city.
And it is our process at SRF to make sure that we're creating something that is usable, that hopefully is something that's not going to be put on a shelf or filed on your desktop that you never open. So through that process, and we've been chatting about this with staff as well, is that if, this might not be, and I can't remember how many pages your 2005 document is, but a lot of times, they're thick, and it's a very cumbersome thing to look at. We might create something that's pretty slim and trim, but that's intentional because it's easy to find the policies and recommendations that we need, because that's really all you need out of this. We will do all of the technical analysis behind it, and that process will be written through technical memorandums that are available through appendices. So if there's some nerdy planner like myself that wants to dive into those things, it's available to me, but the public doesn't care about those things. So that is really critical for us too, is making a digestible document that can be used outside of just this room.
And I have just two quick things, I don't know how quick they are actually. One of the challenges I see is with a comprehensive plan, let's say there is an outside industry that wants to come in and say, we're gonna move our world headquarters for agriculture,
Mm-hmm.
farm implementation, manufacturing, right here in River Falls. We wanna do that.
Yeah.
You look at your comprehensive plan, what does it say about doing that? I mean, is that, and related to that, and the second part was, how does your comprehensive plan relate to your neighboring townships and what they wanna do?
Yeah.
And I see those as kind of the two challenges, is adjusting for a big change
Mm-hmm.
that happens maybe 10 years from now, or
Yeah.
5 years, or whatever. And then also living with your neighbors
Mm-hmm.
respectfully.
Yep.
So those are the two things I'm looking at, is like I'm curious how that will develop through this process.
Yes, and there's a couple of factors with that. One of the required plan elements is intergovernmental cooperation, and I say that plan element is our ability to play nice with others. But there's a lot more that goes into that specifically for River Falls. You are a community that has annexation areas that we're looking at, new growth areas, and there is a relationship of how are we interacting with not just one county, but two counties in our surrounding townships as well. So that will have to be an active part of our process here as well. So, perfect. Well, let's jump into our activity here. So what we're hoping to do is to walk through the 7 plan elements that are, our systems here. And and this is going to help us when we're thinking about the questions that we want to be asking in this initial engagement. So this is a little pressure on you from that standpoint, as you're helping us to understand what's going on here in River Falls and understanding that context. So when we look at these different plan elements, what does that mean to you? What does that include? So we'll start with transportation. So when we think about the transportation plan element and thinking about a long-range vision, what does that mean? Is that transportation is easy, right? It's our cars, our bikes, our peds, our freight, am I missing something? What that includes. And then we also want to understand some strengths, weaknesses, or opportunities. Again, there is no right or wrong answer here. This is all from your experience, but this is helping us, understand you all a little bit as well, but then also helping us think about areas that we want to be framing and asking the public about as well. Because again, our initial engagement opportunity is understanding issues and opportunities and experiences from the public. So one question we might be asking related to housing is, are there housing options that you would like to live in the community but you can't afford to live in, or things like that. So, to get at affordability and things like that. So any questions about this activity that we're in discussion we're hoping to go through the framework? Okay, Perfect. So here's where I'm hoping not to talk very much, so that does put the pressure on you a little bit. So we'll start with transportation, because I do think that that's kind of an easy one. So when we say the transportation, at least for understanding what it means, or what's included, but when we say the transportation plan element, what pops into your head for the topics that might be included within this plan element?
Quality of roads.
Commuting.
Regional, like connecting to other regions in the area.
Getting from one end of town to the other, I'm thinking bike-wise,
Okay.
the north end to the south.
Yeah, and I think with regional connectivity too, I assume you mean beyond cars, right? So like transit or some options with our, especially with our student population, you know, giving them access to get around. Pedestrian access and connectivity.
Would you put pedestrian safety with that as well?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I almost had 40 students plowed over on Second Street a few weeks ago. It was awesome.
Oh, no.
Like, I'm gonna lose my job because I just killed 40 students. I didn't kill them, but the car
Right,
killed
yeah.
them. Yeah.
Anything else? Yeah, no right or wrong answer. Okay, so we started this conversation a little bit already, but from a strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities, you know, what challenges might have you experienced, or things that we might wanna be asking the public, you know, so ped safety, you know, being one, we just, you know, talked about that there are some pedestrian conflicts that we need to be thinking about.
And community for the college population, is that what that is?
And I think even like a better pedestrian, and this is maybe a little too specific, but a better pedestrian connection between the university and downtown. Like that Main Street Cascade intersection is just a disaster, sorry, it's a mess. So I think we have a lot of students who don't have cars,
Yeah,
so allowing them to get to downtown easier is super important.
excellent.
Yeah, like a trolley would be kind of fun. I've seen places have trolleys, that'd be cool.
We had that back in the day. They had the trolley for the college kids.
Oh.
Park out
I've
on the
been
field
college for a
and
while.
take them, which was kind of nice.
Comes and goes, kind of.
Parking's a weakness.
Oh, parking's a
Parking's-
huge weakness.
In a specific area or just?
Everywhere.
Common area.
Overall, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I think eventually like electric car infrastructure is something that we'll want to consider.
We'll toss in our mass transit. Right now we have a shared ride taxi. We're really not big enough to have a bus system, but, yeah.
Having the clinic move downtown was huge for the university students. I know having access to that
Yeah.
closer than by the hospital is a big deal.
Strength is easy to get to River Falls from some direction.
Yep.
Weakness, it's hard to get past unless you're going the Ellsworth Road or if you're trying to get to Prescott. It's a lot of navigating. I know Cemetery Road is on the docket to improve, but it's still tough to get from point A to
What are
B.
they gonna do to cemetery?
Hmm?
What are they gonna do to cemetery?
Well, something, I hope. Please.
She's on the plan commission.
So is is the pedestrian or the bike path, is this part of this too, as far as like related, and I don't know if it's a different bullet point, but it's the getting out of River Falls on a bicycle.
Sure.
If you, is difficult,
Okay.
by my experience.
Yeah, connecting all the regional trails and everything would be nice, yeah.
Anything else on transportation? This is good. I'm glad that you guys are just spitting things out. This makes my job easier.
I mean, I do think traffic does seem to flow. I mean, I don't drive very often because I live a mile from campus and I ride my bike. But it does seem like traffic flows pretty well through town. Maybe I'm just because I don't see it because I don't drive. But like whenever I get in my car and go somewhere, it's not a big deal.
Okay.
But I also came here from Austin, Texas, so my expectations for traffic are pretty low.
Yeah.
we don't wanna make it too easy on them to get through town.
Probably right
Why
by
don't we go slow and see all the businesses and look
Exactly.
around and see everything?
Yeah.
Well, it depends on time of day too. I mean, you
I don't know.
at rush hour, if you will, it's,
You wanna-
This
you
is
wanna-
kind of more specific, but the Sterling Ponds people are kind of disjointed from the rest of us. They're out there in the middle of nowhere. The children, they have one little park out there. And it would be nice to have some availability for them to get down to Glen Park or Hoffman Park, without having to deal with the highway.
Okay.
Well, I don't know how, but you said I could say anything. so-
Exactly, yeah.
That's where those flying cars come in,
Yeah.
automated hovercraft.
or the trolley.
Yeah, there you go. A trolley for the kids.
Get some guy with a riding tractor and like the oil can, you know, the train kind of thing. It's fine, just cruise around, it's fine.
Let's move to housing. What comes to mind when you hear that as a plan element or a consideration?
I think we're
Lots
doing
of it.
good.
Accessibility.
Accessibility?
Say diversity of housing options.
You say lots of it?
We need lots of it.
You need lots of it. Okay.
And then where do you put it to have them be able to walk to the grocery store or ride their bike to the grocery store or get over to the campus
Okay.
without having to, yeah.
Mhm.
Density of housing.
Density?
Yeah.
Accessory dwelling units.
I don't know if this is what you're looking for, but I would like to see us put into place, geothermal, solar panels, make them more, conservation with low flow toilets and all that kind of stuff. I'd like to see that be part of our, that when you cut, I know it's more expensive.
Yeah.
But I think the benefit would be great.
Okay.
There's lots of opportunity.
I was gonna say related to that and the strengths and weaknesses, somewhat of the weakness is maybe the age of some of the housing, and the difficulty of maintaining that, particularly the rental housing around campus.
You know, a lot of that's area specific, that's old downtown, close to walking to the grocery store and walking to the
Right.
restaurants and,
I mean, I like it when I see, you know, people improving those, and that happens regularly, and I applaud that. And I know it's not cheap, but it's, there's some other, you know, you'd like it to happen a little more often at some properties and that kind of thing, but I know it takes time and it's expensive.
Yeah.
And I think college housing certainly, but that I think is in flux because with looking at expected enrollments and stuff, we're not seeing a lot of growth there, so you know, there could be potential for decline in student housing needs, right? So which is, I don't think something most communities are prepared to, or thinking about, of like not needing so many rental units or some of these, like the homes that have been converted in the old part of town into multifamily, like there may not be as much need for that going forward,
Yeah.
so that's certainly something to consider.
Definitely.
Don't some cities have programs where they'll buy rundown houses and sell them dirt cheap, but you have to promise to put $100,000 in them or something like that? I know Indianapolis had a program, but I was too young to really understand what it was.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, there are a variety of programs that, you know, whether it's at the municipal level or the county level too, that go into play from a maintenance perspective. So there's lots of best practices to look at from that standpoint. I think we were chatting about this over dinner, is that the fact that you are a university community does put some challenges on what that transition of naturally occurring affordable housing is the industry term, or NOAA, about where we have aging housing that, you know, maybe maintenance isn't kept up as much, so it becomes a little bit more affordable. And that's where you can have some grant funding and things like that for maintenance that maybe would come from a county or something like that. But when you are a university community and there's the opportunity for somebody to get that maintenance funding and then convert it into, you know, that changes what's available and out there in terms of that affordable housing too. So just a kind of another factor to think about in all of it. but there definitely are programs. And put the housing authority on the list.
And wouldn't it be a more stable housing community if people stayed in their homes? If you got more and more people to have, maybe not single family, because condominiums are nice to stay in too, but just to keep people, although I guess, never mind, because if people move out of houses and that house becomes available to someone else, then they,
Yep.
But you have to somewhere
So I
for them
think-
to move.
I think related to that is the demographics of housing is a challenge. I don't know if you call it weakness maybe, but it's changing. And I came across a headline today about, single people are not able to afford even one-bedroom apartments. And so they're having to find ways with more roommates, they're starting their families later, or they're not interested in starting families. So you're having just different dynamics that families,
Right.
so that's, I think, a challenge that we'll definitely see in the next 20 years.
Yep, and I think from a housing perspective, there's generations that your goal is to own a home. Like, I have succeeded when I can buy my first home. Younger generations, owning a home is not even something they need to have. They would rather live in something smaller so they can travel and do other things. So that is in that same line of what the desires and need for housing is. That's changing too.
And
Go ahead.
I was gonna say the housing employment connection as well. I mean, if we are looking for economic development, if we are looking to, our current businesses to grow and attract more employees, are there places for those employees to live in town, right? Do we have enough housing to serve the needs of the businesses who wanna be here?
Yeah, definitely.
I think for us to be able to be flexible in our housing portfolio, simply because it seems like the market for housing is changing quicker than I think it used to. 5 years ago, it was that millennials wanted to live in the urban core. There was no way they were moving to the subdivisions. They were raising their kids downtown. In recent years now, that seems to have shifted some, and now we're seeing folks moving from the city here, and that changed relatively quickly.
Yeah,
And we need to be able to adapt to that as well.
definitely.
Well, and I think you can still have kind of an urban living experience right there. Because, you have a bar downstairs, you've got the grocery store right there, you've got, you can kind of walk everywhere you need to go, living in downtown River Falls, so you get that sort of urban lifestyle here in River Falls. So how much housing do we even have downtown? Obviously we've got a place here, whatever, but like a lot of those buildings, I think, aren't,
They're not big.
yeah, they're not very big, and there's space. We could build 2 or 3 stories on top of a family fresh, but that's just me. My vision.
Just wanted to add something to what Chris said earlier about the housing and employment connection. So not just having housing available for employees, but having it available at wages that those employers are offering. I think that's a real challenge in communities, and thinking about the jobs that we're trying to attract, or, what people can afford then in that community, and that being an economic development issue that intersects with housing.
Okay, let's jump to the next. Economic development, so that was kind of a good little transition right in. But, so when you hear economic development, what comes to mind? What does that mean for River Falls?
Retail came to mind right off the top of my head, and maybe the jumping out to the bottom. I feel like there's some gaps in the type of retail stores and things that people are traveling to Hudson
Yep.
to go to the big box there to get things, and we have our dollar stores here, which serves a purpose, but it's we just have a gap of inventory of product in
Yep.
town.
well, like I said before, I can't buy a pair of pantyhose here. And we're a college town, you're kind of like, what?
College kids aren't wearing pantyhose.
Go, Chris.
We'll go back to that. You know what I mean? You can't buy a dress, you can't buy a pair of shoes.
Right.
Well, you can buy at the secondhand stores, you can do
Yeah, sure.
that, but, But you can go to Hudson, there's a whole shoe shop there, there's,
Yeah.
well, a whole kitchen sales places
there is?
and knitting and all that kind of stuff. It's like, why can't we do that here?
Cause it's in Hudson.
Because it's in Hudson.
Nobody, I mean,
Yeah.
we're kind of in that unique situation where we're five miles away from everything.
And if it was
So-
one more mile, we'd probably be getting it, but it's just right on that.
Yeah, no, it is, it's weird.
Yep,
You
I
know,
what you're
you
saying.
got, you know, big box stores, you got everything in Hudson or New Richmond, and they're not gonna build another one here.
Right.
And, you know, part of our problem is rent downtown is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And there's nothing we can do about that, because we don't own the buildings,
Right.
you know? But I agree, it'd be nice to get some retail, but people, I mean, I know, I own a retail business in town. It's not easy. There's 40,000 places, everybody works in the cities, there's 40,000 places they drive by. They can stop and get it cheaper than they can here in River Falls.
Well, and the online market is affected.
And online market has affected everything. Nobody's building
Right.
brick and mortar anymore. It's too damn expensive.
I think we do have a fairly diverse primary employment though. We've got the university, we've got the cookie factory, we've got a strong
Yeah.
primary employment foundation here. So yeah, we don't have a lot of retail, but we've got a lot of really strong jobs
Mhm.
and opportunities, you know, in that primary sector, bringing money into the community, which
Yeah.
is great.
Yes.
So then those folks either live out of town or go out of town for any of their
Right, sure.
food, clothing,
Yeah.
dining.
Yeah, we're losing the retail dollars from those folks, absolutely.
So I'm not being facetious. Should we just admit we're bars and restaurants? That's what River Falls is? It's not any place
It's a-
to, no, I'm not being, I'm just saying, should we look at the reality?
Just
We're
lean
not a
into
place to
that.
go shopping.
Well, it's a 20-year plan.
Yeah.
And 20 years ago, we were
Right.
concerned about brick and mortar. We were really concerned in this town about how that was gonna shift how things
Right.
work downtown. And 20 years later, here we are, and brick and mortar is off the table. So, I mean, it's, you know, things can go in cycles and
I
happen
mean, we've
faster
got
than
pretty
not,
pictures,
so.
folks.
I
We
know,
really
we got-
complain about a lack of retail, come on, we got pretty pictures.
And
Our gas
And a
is,
Holiday
and
Inn.
our gas is
Or
10
holiday.
cents more than anywhere else in the world, I don't get that either. Our gas is more expensive than anywhere.
But if River Falls to that point isn't about where you get goods and services necessarily, maybe where you get experiences, because it seems like that's where some of the consumer trends are going. Since you're getting all your goods and services online, people are looking for experiences. And so that can be an economic development driver. So what experiences are people coming uniquely to River Falls for, and how can you capitalize?
That's a good point, because again, we do
Yeah.
have that cute little theater downtown, and there's a lot of cool stuff here, for sure.
You know, or things like Tattersall locating where they did because of the proximity to the bike trails and that kind of thing. And then people coming from the cities to have that type of unique experience because of those factors.
Kayaking, the whole thing.
Baseball, we got a beautiful baseball field.
But how do we draw them from Tattersall to Main Street?
That's
or
where the
from
trolley comes in.
Ball Field to Main Street?
The trolley and the bike tracks.
To Main Street.
Yeah.
I think to Mike's point about this 20-year is the ability to stay nimble, to not be
Mhm.
stuck in like,
Right.
to think of one, you know, this is who we are today, but not thinking forward, but remaining flexible in these policies or, you know, pathways we're creating now.
And I think that's a really good point to align with your, you know, do we just admit that we're not this? There are certain things, sure, that we will say that this is not for River Falls, but I think we should never plan ourselves out of an opportunity.
Right.
So, you know, it may not be the truth for where we're at here today, but that doesn't, you know, who knew, when 2005 when the plan was written, who knew that in 2020 our world would completely change with the global pandemic? So how do we, you know, be able to shift? That's the one thing I didn't mention. This plan is a living document, so there's nothing to say that because we're gonna adopt it, you know, in however many months, that this is what you have to live with for the next 10 years. It can change, and it should change if there are things that, you know, shift. If all of a sudden there is this huge shift of entrepreneurs that are moving into River Falls and that totally changes our retail market, and the plan isn't ready for that, that's an opportunity to go back in and change and update it to make sure that it makes sense. But we also don't wanna set ourselves up where, if we have that opportunity to support entrepreneurs and change that market, that we've made it so that we can't do that either, so.
I think under economic development, our business parks are a big part of that.
Yeah.
And most of our, when I say about our business parks, is most of our businesses are, they're not just factory work. Most of them are higher end businesses where they're paying good wages.
Yep.
So,
And they're diverse in the different sectors of the
Yep.
economy, which
Yes.
is helpful, so that if the part of the economy collapses, you're not losing multiple jobs. You know,
Definitely.
Detroit being where everything was
Example,
connected
yeah.
to the auto industry.
Yeah.
So I think we're good in that part, although we have the university as the anchor
yeah.
employer. I think the River Falls has done a really good job since the I remember when the first Whitetail Ridge Park opened in '94, and I was skeptical about what that was gonna be about, but it's good economic development decision making.
Yeah.
And so,
Excellent.
We talked about downtown, but it should be its own bullet.
Yeah.
Well, and I think we are kind of getting a kind of a hub for alcohol. Got 3 breweries in town, right? Swinging Bridge, the Bikes and Brew, which, right, they brew some of their own beer, and Rush River, and now I have a distillery, and that's huge tourism. I mean, I'm certainly a fan of I go visit places because they have, distilleries and such there, so that's another, opportunity for tourism development to go along with the river and the kayaking and the fly fishing and all of those things as well.
Definitely. Let's move on to the next one, which is our utilities and community facilities. So I'll just say a little something and then maybe get your reaction for what you think this is. Because utilities is generally pretty easy to understand, right? But for the public, it's the water, clean water comes out of my tap and I shut it off, those kinds of things. But then the community facilities are, the way I think about it is those services that are available, whether that's, and sometimes we want to be thinking about those that are municipally run, maybe not county or necessarily, because we don't have the ability to do a lot with that, but, whether that's, gathering spaces, or, different resources that are available, to the community. This is the one area that sometimes recreation and our park system can fall under. Sometimes it also falls under our ag, natural, and cultural resources too. So I'll maybe pause there and let you guys, what do you think about when you hear utilities and community facilities? What does that mean?
well, when I was on the utility commission for a number of years, and I think of wastewater treatment capacity, particularly when it comes to economic development. If there's an industry that wants to come in, can we handle
Yep.
their capacity?
Well, and if we're gonna promote, electric cars, then people are plugging in their cars, so we need to expand our ability to provide electricity.
Yep.
Because that's not, hopefully we can get a lot of people, and we can actually have some stations within the city, so someone coming from out of town will be able to plug their car in.
Yep.
So anyway, that would require more and more ability to provide electricity.
Transition to renewables, I mean, obviously the city's doing a lot in that direction already, but, supporting the transition to renewables.
Plus, we own our own utilities, so we don't wanna get too crazy on the renewables. The dirty little secret.
No, I know, I worked for
There's a
an electric
balance.
provider
There's
for
a
many
there's a
years.
balance, that's for sure.
Yeah, I worked for a major electric and water provider for many years, so I know all about that.
What about the community facilities side of this? What are some things that come to mind when you hear?
I think ensuring proper maintenance, just making sure that we have great stuff and we've put money into it, so let's make sure we're not overrunning, because it's easy to build new stuff, it's harder to maintain what you already have.
Yep.
So making sure we maintain what we have first and then worry about new stuff.
Bury our power lines, that can save you money from power outages, plus it looks better.
I'm thinking to myself with the corridor plan that we sat on, just community meeting space, social gathering places. Yes, we've got beautiful park system, the university has venues and facilities, but the places for this, folks to gather, aside, you close down Main Street for the parade and whatnot, but
Yeah.
some space that,
Would broadband fit under there?
Is there a senior center in town?
No.
not currently.
Is there
I
a
mean,
what?
a senior center.
There's
There's
Well, I
no-
guess senior
It's
Wellhaven.
kind of, it's
Wellhaven
linked
does.
to Wellhaven, but it's not like a dedicated
Yeah.
senior
Yeah.
center.
Or at least senior programming, maybe, I don't know if that would count
That
as
count- I mean,
facilities,
that's
but
Wellhaven.
maybe.
Yeah.
I'm not that old yet, but I'm getting there.
Well, we don't have a youth center. We used to have Ingram Center, but that's been gone a long time. And it would have to be downtown. This idea of putting something out like by Whitetail, it's like, now how are the kids gonna get there?
Yeah.
I don't know, skate park, is that still, do kids still skate? My kids are too
Oh,
old
we
now.
get that at the park board all the time.
Yeah, skate parks.
I'm interested in the data collection part of this to come up, because we kind of all maybe do similar things, that maybe through the data collection, that there's something that is not represented within, our shared experiences that someone else could bring to the table, so I'm interested to see what that is through the data collection process, through meeting with different groups.
And I'd say even the college kids, I mean, I know, from the university perspective, a lot of our students go home on the weekends because there's not a lot for them to do here.
Yeah.
And that just perpetuates, like, there's nothing to do, so they go home, so there's no reason to have something to do, so you never have anything to do, but certainly I think, something dedicated or kind of targeted towards the university kids would be helpful as well. They all should be, at home doing homework, but I know they're not doing that.
It's the laundry, they wanna bring it home.
Right, yeah, we don't pay for laundry if they
Two
take it
of those
home.
labs.
Yeah.
Anything else we're missing on utilities and community facilities?
No, probably, but we'll think of it later.
This is just the first of many.
Yeah.
Exactly. And as we're transitioning down, my contact information is on one of the handouts that you guys got, along with our lead for the Park and Rec plan, and we'll be getting a new, there's been a staff shift on Alta's side, but so there's contact information there, if you think of something else or want to get a hold of us at any point.
Are we gonna be able to get a copy of this?
We can email this out,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah, that'd be
Yep.
nice.
We'll make sure that Amy has it and we'll get it out immediately. Okay, then land use. Now, this is a funny topic because I think, we all know what land use means, but it is something from, the public side. That is, when you hear the term land use, it's okay, what does that mean? But what do you guys think of when you hear land use?
I'll bring in what my students are doing for their final project. And it's a future land use plan for River Falls, so I'll share that with Alec Ventures and see what they come up with.
When will that be done?
Friday.
I'd say
Do they need to
diversity.
present it to anyone?
No, no, just to me, just to me. I'm a planning consultant of one on this one, so. I think efficiency, making sure we're not sprawling out and building crap we don't need.
Boundary agreements.
Yep.
I knew Amy would love that.
Green space, it's something that's top of mind that people say, I need something different.
Well, I like that idea of diversity too. I mean, when we talk about like housing, for example, not just have like this is all our single family here and that's all our multifamily there and that's whatever. I mean, I think about like up in Hudson, that neighborhood right there by 35 and 94, where they have like, it's literally like single family homes and duplexes and townhomes and apartments all in that one little neighborhood. And it's not like affordable housing, it's market rate housing, but there's a diversity of it. So you can have, an apartment and then, I had a kid, now I'm gonna move to a duplex and whatever within that same neighborhood. So things like that I think are great. And allowing more of that and having like a coffee shop retail center right in the middle of it would be really nice.
Yep.
So.
Well, and I think protecting our wetlands,
Mhm.
I might get a little political here, but I'd love to keep Lake George, to have the river and a lake to walk around with the birds that are different than what a river would provide.
Connections?
Well,
I was gonna say connections and easements I think. Access, I have that in my neighborhood, there's an easement between the homes the home I live in and the next door neighbor, so kids can walk through to get to the school. And, I like the idea of it, I like living next to that.
Yeah.
And, so.
It's hard to find though. Like I walk that street pretty regularly and I was like, where's that easement? And
Right,
it's
you
like,
gotta look for the post.
Yeah, you gotta look for the post. So,
Wayfinding, that's another one.
that would help with your
Yeah.
parking problem if you had better wayfinding to the parking spots that are already in downtown and made it safer crossing Second Street. You have that huge parking lot right there that is not very far from downtown. You just take your life in your hands crossing Second Street.
Anything else for land use? Okay. Then we've got the mouthful of agricultural, natural, and cultural resources. So this is a mouthful and a large bucket of things. So whether it's, whatever form of agriculture you want to bring in, natural being our, the environment that was
Yeah.
here before us, and
The
cultural.
river, the parks.
Just would historic preservation fall in this box as well?
Yeah, because I'd love to see a museum. We don't have, I can't believe River Falls doesn't have a museum.
I know like urban ag and the potential for like hydroponics. I think there's that new place growing lettuce apparently in the, urban ag and community gardens. I know we have the one at Huffman Park, but that's not super accessible. But finding opportunities for more community gardens and things like that, I think would be nice. Backyard chickens. Dare I say
There you
backyard
go.
chickens?
I like that idea.
I don't have a fence in my yard, so I'm not gonna get chickens, but
Quiet.
I'm not gonna get them because I don't have a fence in my backyard, but.
There's no
Well, we
chicken.
used to call those gardens for the bees and the, what do they call those, pollinators?
Pollinators,
Pollinators,
Yeah.
You're
yeah.
gonna have to get her to delete that one.
Yeah.
I do love that you can have a beehive in your backyard, but not chickens, so no one ever died from a bee allergy, a chicken allergy.
Bees don't.
No, I'm teasing, I knew that was a hot button, so I just had to push it, I'm sorry, I'm being that guy.
No, that's, move to Hudson if you want chickens. Or out in the country, there's a lot of country for sale.
I get my eggs like a normal person from the grocery store.
There you go.
From Quick Trip, they're cheaper there.
I think exploring or making use of the full cultural resource in this area, like pre-1800s, I think that it's so rich in this area that, that we could make use of.
Yeah, I think that's cultural, when we've heard cultural before, it went immediately to historic preservation of how do we maintain those buildings in downtown that have been here for so long, but the emphasis is growing now in what we're hearing in other communities to make, it's not just what we did here, it's who was here,
Right.
before us,
Right.
but also celebrating the other cultures that are coming into our community from other areas as well, and I don't know the diversity, let's say, in the student population and things like that, but generally, you get some other diversity into the community as well.
I think ag preservation is important as well, like identifying those prime agricultural lands and pushing development elsewhere. Maintaining, I do like that there's, and this may go under land use, but I do like that there's a distinct separation between, River Falls and Hudson and Prescott to the south. Like, you leave the community and you leave it. Like,
Yeah.
you're not just sprawling like, oh, there's Woodbury and there's whatever, and 40 miles later, you're on the other side, like, okay, I'm done with that. And there's like 50 cities you just drove through.
Yeah.
So I do like having that space.
I like what the two of you said, because it's true. Whenever you read one of our pamphlets or something about River Falls, it starts out with Joel Foster coming here in 1848. And the Chippewa were here, and there's probably a great story to be told. We need the people to tell it. I mean, I can't tell their story. But it would be nice for your children to know this is what was here, and then Joel Foster came.
I would put topography and the bluffs on this list.
And would library resources be in this bucket too? What are library resources gonna look like, you know, over time? And what does, you know, what is, you know, a library today might be something different. A community, different type of community center
Sure.
in the future, so I don't know if
Yeah.
that's in this bucket too.
So I think that could go here or in, community facilities,
Yeah.
so we'll have to see.
Right,
which
okay,
bucket,
so-
yeah,
Yeah.
which one goes in, but,
Anything else for our, I think this is the other one that in other communities they'll add recreation, because it needs to be a longer title. But this is another, to me, there's a lot of similarity between the utilities and community facilities and this one, just in how, what the benefit. These are the two ironically that are, I think we sometimes struggle with what they mean, but they're the two that people most connect with their quality of life, is in these two. You know, I don't wanna be next to a smelly hog rendering plant, but I also wanna, you know, be able to celebrate the outdoors and have, you know, clean water to drink and things like that. So that's I think it's interesting about this plan element in community facilities, but.
So do things like public art fall in here,
Mhm.
or things like, you know, the university has a fine arts center, and the schools put on plays, and, you know, so some of those other kind of,
Yes.
when you think about culture in the
Yep.
community,
Yep.
arts and that kind of thing.
downtown concerts and.
Yeah, those are great. I love the downtown concerts. I'm a big fan. And the university did them too pre-COVID at the amphitheater on campus too,
Yep.
like during the summertime. Maybe we'll get back to it someday. Maybe things will be normal.
How about intergovernmental cooperation? And again, this is our ability to play nice with others, but how are we using our partners?
Yeah, I see three of them there. It's the university as part of that. And then you've got the school district, and that has to deal with, you know, how taxes are divided and things like that. So those two, and then, of course, the townships.
Yeah, we have 4 townships, 2 counties.
Yep, 2 counties, 4 townships.
Yeah.
Well,
And they're-
with the university, you might wanna put the tech college.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cooperative agreements can go here too.
Bond agreements, big deal.
I was thinking that
They're
was
a
not a
big deal.
weakness or strength, one of the two.
Huh?
Boundary issues, yeah.
Yeah. See, that's why we have boundary agreements, so we don't have boundary issues.
So in this chapter, for me, in the end, is one that kind of can take some, there are some important things about, you know, shared services or cooperative agreements, boundary agreements that need to be tackled here, but it's also an opportunity to celebrate the organizations and community groups that will help implementation pieces moving forward. So it's our partners, within the community, both from a local level, but also from a state level, as well. So.
Well, and as the Kinney goes north, we rely on the townships to implement their agriculture and their plowing and how they fertilize their fields and stuff. And, cause that starts running into the river and then comes down this way.
Yep.
Stephanie, do you ever include nonprofits in here?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think emergency management too, in
Yes.
terms of natural hazards, threats, those kinds of things.
Yep.
I'm teaching that class this semester and it's stuff I don't know anything about these days.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
How to deal with that stuff.
Would you consider state and federal government
Yes.
in here as well?
Yep.
And federal comes to mind, and certain grants that you
Mhm.
can apply for that are very hard to get, but,
Yeah.
you know, those kind of things.
Yeah, and that's one thing that this process, you gotta navigate how to do it in a way that doesn't become cumbersome, but when you're applying for federal grants or state grants, if there's community support within the comprehensive plan, that makes a grant a lot easier to write as well, so that will be something that we wanna be mindful of, particularly, you know, we've got an infrastructure bill with all kinds of money out there and some of those things, so we do wanna be mindful of of being a little more specific if we do have some things that might have grant funding opportunities. Obviously, that's in some ways the entire intent of the outdoor recreation plan, to be eligible for recreation funding, but that does also apply to both the bike ped plan and the comprehensive plan, so. Anything, so we got through our 7 plan elements here. Is there anything we didn't talk about that you're surprised? We didn't, you know, these are meant to be comprehensive, but anything we missed? Or final
No
thoughts?
chickens.
No, we didn't miss them. They're not here, so we don't have to miss them.
Okay.
No, I-
Well, there's broader things such as, we didn't talk about safety, we didn't talk about health, and we didn't talk about education.
Mhm.
But I'm assuming those are too big of a broad to really talk about in this kind of a plan.
Education, a lot of times, will interweave itself into intergovernmental cooperation and community facilities, because they are those quality of life components. Now, they're tough because they're areas that the city doesn't have, you know, we have a school district.
Right.
This isn't the school district's plan, but we do want to be thinking about the community in ways that can support that maintenance of education. And part of that comes, if we need a new school, our land use plan should, you know, be able to think about where that school should be going, and we're not
Well,
gonna.
the reason we're all wearing masks now is because we took this seriously.
Yep.
And I know a lot of times when people were asking for different licenses and stuff and came before the council, one of the questions was, do you require masks?
Mhm.
And Scott Simpson has just been big on that. So
Yeah.
anyway, that health part of it doesn't just go with masks. I mean, it goes with the whole work. We want to be known as a community that, you know,
Yeah.
healthy.
Yep.
And health is things like walkability and, you know,
Yep.
ability to access the outdoors, that kind of thing. What about sustainability and resilience?
Yeah.
I think like some of that came up with the UV infrastructure and some,
Mhm.
but it might also be like flood,
Mhm.
ability to handle floods, or different types of rain events or those kinds of things.
Well, and I know the dams are part of the Kinney plan, but I think that's gonna be something that's probably gonna still be an issue with this too, is what happens with the dams
Mhm.
and the Kinney kind of overall.
Anything else?
It's a lot for one meeting.
Yeah, it is.
Did we do good?
You did so good. You guys did so good.
But I think you're right, that, I mean, this goes to your point, like what you said earlier, though, like, we could sit in this room and come up with probably 30 goals for the plan that might very well represent what we get from the public.
Yeah.
But we do it in a room behind closed doors, public's gonna say, well, who the hell are you to tell us what to do?
Yeah.
So, you know, we're gonna go talk to the public and have these surveys in town hall meetings and probably get a very similar list to what we just came up with. But then we'll know we're on the right track.
Right.
And I think the model for that has been the Kinney Corridor project that was done. I thought that was done very well with the input from the
Yep.
public, and there were activities involved and interviews, and
Mhm.
so if we have that kind of thing, then.
Exactly.
But it was also a different world then.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
You just wonder how much
Yeah.
input will we get virtually, will we get as much quality as we did having all of the one-on-one face-to-face time?
That's
Yep.
true, considering that this is a one-year process, and
Mhm.
we're not, this is what we're doing.
Yeah, it's a 5-year thing.
So that is a good transition into our next steps, as well. So as Sam gets this pulled up, we, again, if you think of other things, and this is just our first opportunity to start dipping our toes. So, I am open to conversation at any point. So if there's something you ever want to talk about or things like that, just please let us know. But what is happening next? So we kicked off the outdoor recreation plan with that committee. We're kicking the comp plan off with all of you. January is our kickoff for the bike ped plan. We are active in the data collection phase. So this is really our team's opportunity to get to know River Falls, as well as the rest of you do. So looking at what mapping resources do we have available, what are our census numbers, what are our demographics and things like that looking like. And then we're gearing up for an external kickoff in January. So that is our public opportunity. Hey, we're doing this crazy 20-year plan. Let's get you involved. and asking these questions here. So we are actively working through what that looks like, because there are, you know, some limitations for what that means. In just the planning world, we can be doing things in person, but we also need to provide a virtual opportunity. And it is really our hope to be able to use, we're gonna call it our online engagement platform, but we're using the tool Bang the Table. But Bang the Table is kind of I don't know why they came up with that name
I
personally.
like that name, and what'd you guys change it to? Online engagement platform. Bang the Table is, why is that offensive?
Well, wasn't it Khrushchev slam at the meeting with Kennedy banging his shoe on the table? Wasn't that?
So we're also working on a branding exercise right
Yes.
now, so it will have a different name.
Yes.
We just need to finalize that yet.
Yeah.
Can I ask what the options are?
No.
I'm very opinionated about this. As long as it's not dream, imagine,
Yeah.
or keep it, dream, imagine, any of those are just terrible. My students won't let me live it down because I make fun of those all the time in class, so. Yeah,
We'll be okay, yeah.
good. I have faith.
So we're just calling it it'll have a different name from that perspective, but that will be an ongoing tool throughout this entire process. So the hope is that we're getting people engaged in the beginning, and it provides us a conduit to them throughout the entirety of this planning process. So we may not be in a formal engagement phase, but hey, we really want to test out this idea or get some input. That's what this tool provides us the opportunity to do as well. But we are looking at January 27th as our date, but we are actively looking at what the format of this looks like. We talked this evening about an open house format to just, so we're not all in the room at the same time. But the one great thing, and that we've at least found in our sphere, is that the ability to participate when it works for me through a virtual environment has been very effective. But yes, it does mean that we are engaging people in a different way. You know, so we have to think a little bit more creatively about how we can get people to respond or engage in activities where we're not, you know, able to draw on a map together or have a one-on-one conversation. So we're finding that there's maybe more opportunity to engage some people that wouldn't otherwise be engaged, but in a different manner than otherwise. So we'll be actively working through that and what makes sense throughout. The last slide here, I did want to talk about, I think I have one more slide, about future meetings. So like I said, we're scoped to have 7 or 6 more of these meetings through our planning process. And what we had chatted about was just to get these, our intent is to not use your regular meeting every time, because we don't know, you know, what you're gonna have on your regular meeting agendas moving forward. These are going to be, you know, potentially some longer conversations depending on what we have going on. So what we wanted to throw out was potentially picking one date a month that we could put on the calendar like your regular meeting is, but knowing that we wouldn't use every one of them. That we would, 2 weeks ahead of, so if we picked the last Thursday of every month, midway through the month, we'd say, yes, we're having a meeting, here's your agenda, or no, we're having it, we can delete it from this month. That way we know when they all are, it's already on your calendar. Any thoughts, dislikes, yes, no's, thumbs up, thumbs down on that approach?
I like it.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Perfect. So we will, I think, start with staff on when things, I know you all you are on a couple of commissions, we've got we'll work through that, and then maybe work through a doodle poll or something like that to just make sure you don't have other commitments that aren't on the city's calendar, and find a date that works for most, and then we will get that on the calendar, and then again, the process, 2 weeks ahead of time, it would be yes or no, we have a meeting, and then a week ahead of that meeting would be when you'd receive any materials that you need to review for that process, so. Perfect. And that's all we had for you.
That's all?
That's all. But thank you so much. It was really good discussion. We've got some really great things
Of course.
to work through. So I appreciate the time and look forward to this process.
And yeah, if we could get that,
Yes.
what was done.
Yes, we will get that.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank
Thank you. Thanks.